This is one of the worst fantasy football seasons that I can remember in a long time in terms of injuries. It just feels like every single week, another star player is done for the year or out for the next month with an injury. Like, it's been awful. It's been brutal. It's been frustrating. But what that means for you, what that means for me, is that the waiver wire has never been more important. So in this video, we are talking about 10 plus players that you need to be adding on the waiver wire before week 7, starting with my number 1 pickup of the week, and it's Kimani Vidal, the running back for the Chargers, who we actually had on the must-start list last week. Hopefully he's already on your roster. If you've been watching this channel, he should already be on your team. Hopefully you actually started him last week and he led you to victory because he had a really nice game. He came through in a massive way. 18 carries, 124 yards, 3 receptions, 14 yards. Got into the end zone, 22.8 fantasy points, and yeah, he was the clear back over Hassan Haskins, which that's what we thought was going to happen. Not to toot my own horn here, but it worked out. 67% of the snaps, 72% of the rush attempts, 56% of the routes, and he outsnapped Haskins 43-20, and he was averaging 6.6 yards per touch. Kimani, that is, compared to Haskins, 3.3 yards per touch. It's clear at this point that Vidal is the workhorse back for the Chargers for the foreseeable future until they get Omarion Hampton back, which is going to be a while. It might not even be until week 13 when they come out of their bye, because reports have already been coming out that Hampton's going to be out longer than 4 weeks. So not great. I honestly think Kimani is an RB2 in fantasy with upside until Hampton returns. This is a really good player. I would be very aggressive getting him on your roster, especially if you need a running back, because anytime you can get the starting running back on a really good offense that's going to see the majority of the work, you do it. And yes, the matchup against Miami was really easy. It was. The Dolphins' run defense is not good. But outside of that, I still think Vidal is a really good player, and I still think he can build off last week's performance. I don't think it was a fluke by any means. I don't think he only played that well because of the easy matchup. It helped, obviously, but why didn't Haskins have this huge game, right? So Vidal is going to be the guy. He's the most talented back on the roster, which we've been telling you for over a week now, and he performed on an offense that is missing 2 key offensive linemen. We know Joe Alt, their best offensive lineman at this point, was not active. So once that unit gets healthy, I think that's only going to help. And like I said, I would be really aggressive getting Vidal on your roster. I think he's going to continue to play really well and be very usable for fantasy. All right, moving on to our next guy, Tyjae Spears, who's only played 2 games this season, but it's very apparent already that he is the much better running back than Tony Pollard is at this point. I think it was clear last year, and it's even more evident this year, because in week 5, Spears had 5 carries for 31 yards, 6.2 yards per carry, 4 receptions, 19 yards. He only had 9 fantasy points, right? But they're still easing him back coming off that injury. But he saw 60% of the snaps, 44% of the routes, 69% of the short down and distance snaps. And similar to what we were just talking about with Vidal, I think Spears is far and away the more explosive, the more efficient, the more versatile back on this roster. He has a different level of juice that Pollard just doesn't have anymore. And Pollard hasn't been great all year, wasn't great in week 6, 10 carries, 34 yards. Like, I think this is for sure going to be Spears' job sooner rather than later. The Titans are 1-5. Why are they going to keep rolling out Tony Pollard, who's an older player? Like, they want to see what they have in this younger roster, in their younger players. And I would argue that Tyjae is the most talented player they have on offense, not counting the offensive line, but the skill position players. It's Spears, it's Cam Ward. I just think this is a very special player that can get it done on the ground and through the air. He's a better fit for what Tennessee wants to do, what they're going to be forced to do in most games because they're so bad, because their defense is so bad, is what? They're going to be playing from behind, which means they're going to be throwing the ball a lot, which means Tyjae is going to be on the field because he's the pass down back. He's more than just the pass down back, but he is far and away the better receiver than Tony Pollard is. So I want the guy who's going to be on the field more often, who could get little checkdowns from Cam Ward, be his little safety blanket out of the backfield. It's especially nice in PPR leagues. And we know Tennessee just fired their head coach in Brian Callahan. Big changes are coming. And I think one of them is going to be Spears is going to be the dude in this backfield. I don't think Pollard is going to completely go away, but Tyjae is going to be dominating touches from here on out. And last year when he was the guy in the backfield from weeks 15 to 17, he was one of the best running backs in all of fantasy football, talking about Tyjae Spears. So Why would you not want him on your team? Like being on a bad offense, right? It's not super appealing, but Tajay Spears is a good enough player. His involvement in the receiving game that he's going to have a nice floor. And if he starts scoring touchdowns for you, he could be a guy that your roster really needs if you're hurting at running back. I would get him on your team now for relatively cheap before he does have that big blow up game, and then you have to pay up for him. All right, moving on to our next guy, Harold Fannin, the rookie tight end for the Cleveland Browns. He kind of was impressing earlier on in the year, then kind of got phased out a little bit, but we are back. And he saw an expanded role in week 6. We know David Njoku suffered that knee injury. It did not look great. I'm expecting him to miss some time. We don't know the diagnosis of the injury yet, but like I said, it didn't look good. He's going to be out for a couple weeks. And Fannin, once he left, took full advantage. He saw a season high in targets and yards, 80% snap share, 25% route participation, 20% target share, and he put up nice numbers, 7 receptions, 81 yards on 10 targets. Granted, Dylan Gabriel dropped back a ton in this game to throw, so that's, maybe these numbers are a little misleading, but I don't think they are. I think he is the guy in the passing game for the Browns because they just don't really have anyone else. He put up 15.1 fantasy points. You love to see that. This is a really fun player for Cleveland that they want to move all around the formation. He's not your typical tight end, as he saw 22 snaps from the tight end position, 31 snaps from the slot, 7 out wide, and 1 from the backfield. This is a very unique player that feels more like an offensive weapon for the Browns. Like they want to use him everywhere. And like I said, I think he's going to be the guy in the passing game. He looks like he's going to be Gabriel's favorite target as well. And this is a big dude. Granted, tight ends, right? They're supposed to be big. I get it. But he's 6'4", 240. He's a beast over the middle. He's really hard to bring down. Like just watch some of his highlights. Like it takes several dudes to finally drag him down. And he's forced 11 missed tackles through 6 weeks, which is the most among tight ends and receivers in the National Football League. So there you go. He's an exciting player. He's really hard to bring down. He's really talented, and I think he's going to see a big-time role on this offense moving forward, regardless if Njoku is healthy or not. Like, I think they want to get him the ball. They want him to be the guy in the passing game, and if you need a tight end, make sure you get Fannin on your team now, if he's not already on your roster, because the next 2 matchups are also really juicy against the Dolphins and the Patriots, who both rank inside the top 10 in fantasy points per game allowed to the tight end position. Really talented player. He's already flashed. He's on an offense that looks like they might have to throw a lot to win games in the future. And if Njoku's out for a while, he has top 10 upside at the position. All right, moving on to our next guy, Jalen Coker, who didn't return on Sunday against the Cowboys. We were hoping that he would, but he's going to be back in week 7. It will be a huge boost to this Carolina passing attack, but we know the guy on this Carolina offense right now is Rico Dowdle, who's playing on another level. Like, I don't see when Chuba Hubbard comes back, I don't see how Hubbard is the starter after what Dowdle has been doing. He's been incredible. But let's talk about Coker. He did flash his rookie year where he had 3 games of 14-plus fantasy points, including a blow-up performance in Week 15 against the Cowboys, 4 receptions, over 100 yards, got into the end zone, 21 fantasy points, along with 1.83 yards per route run, which was 4th among rookies. I think Coker is going to be really good for Bryce Young. He needs those guys coming out of the slot, maybe easier throws for Bryce, who has still been struggling this year. Jalen also was heating up the last 6 games of 2024, averaging 55.7 yards per game while sporting 18.3% target share. And what's even more impressive is Coker was 2nd among rookie receivers in yards per route run versus man coverage, ahead of guys like Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas Jr. This is a really good player. I do think Coker is going to help take some attention off McMillan. Here's what I will say. After watching Bryce Young for 6 weeks now, don't go too crazy with the fab trying to get Jalen on your team. I do like the upside. I think this is a very talented player. I think he's going to have a massive role on this offense, but his ceiling will continue to be capped by Bryce Young. Like he's not getting it done. Like McMillan did have 2 touchdowns last week, but 40 receiving yards in the best matchup that he could have had all year. It's not great. But this is a situation where I'm betting on talent. I'm betting on Coker having a big role on this offense. But he does have some flex value, some flex appeal this week against the New York Jets defense that has allowed the 9th most PPR points per target to slot receivers. Maybe Bryce needs a guy in the slot. like I said, to convert those easy throws. Maybe that will benefit Jalen. But don't go too crazy with your fab, like I said, because I think Bryce Young caps this overall passing attack. All right, moving on to our next guy, Kendrick Bourne, who just continues to ball out. He's been really impressive. In week 5, 10 receptions, 142 yards, 24.2 fantasy points. And then last week, 5 receptions, 142 yards, again, 19.2 fantasy points, 23% target share, 85% route participation, wide receiver 4 in fantasy over the last 2 weeks. He was also another guy who we told you to start, and he came through again. That was really nice to see. Obviously, Bourne's value is going to take a hit once all the starters on the San Francisco offense return. We did get a report that George Kittle is expected to practice. Looks like he might return in week 7, but who else do they have? Juwan Jennings came out of last week's game saying that he's been playing with 5 broken ribs and high and low ankle sprains. Like, he's not going to be back for a while. We know Brandon Ayuk's not going to be back for a while. Ricky Pearsall is also a huge question mark for week 7. So even if they do have Kittle, like, I think Kendrick is still going to have a role on this offense. If you need a receiver, I would still be adding him to your team because we don't know if Kittle is going to play, right? And then Kendrick is going to be the guy again. So like I said, I would be adding Kendrick, get him on your roster. He could have another boom week before a lot of the starters return. Even in a tougher matchup against the Falcons, be conservative with your fab, right? Because he could be a rental. But if you're struggling right now, if your team is not winning games, if you're dealing with a lot of injuries, you need to play week to week. So it doesn't hurt to get Bourne on your team if he's going to give you a couple more strong performances. And if more guys get hurt, then he's going to step up again. Like, he's just been too good to leave on the waiver wire at this point. All right, moving on to our next guy, Mason Taylor, who was a massive disappointment in week 6, along with the entire Jets offense. Like, they were just so bad. They could not do anything against that Broncos defense. You probably want nothing to do with Taylor after that performance, but here's why he's on this list. Garrett Wilson dealing with a knee injury. Apparently he avoided a serious injury, which is good to hear, but he's probably going to miss the next 2 weeks or so, which means who are they going to throw the football to on offense, right? Like, outside of Breece Hall in the passing game, it's going to be Taylor. And I also wouldn't be shocked if Tyrod Taylor took over at quarterback sooner rather than later, because Justin Fields has been a massive disappointment once again. And even if Justin does stay as the Jets QB1, which would not shock me either, he was cooking with Taylor prior to week 6. As Mason's last 2 games, he was averaging 66 receiving yards per game, 26% target share, 27% first read share, 1.89 yards per route run. He was a tight end 9 in fantasy over that stretch, 19 targets over the last 2 games. And his next 2 matchups are really nice against the Panthers and the Bengals, who both rank top 3 in fantasy points per game allowed to the tight end position. I'm expecting Taylor to bounce back this week. If you really need a tight end, don't lose faith in the rookie, because he is going to survive on a ton of volume if they can get him the football. All right, moving on to our next guy, Isaiah Davis, the running back for the Jets. Like we just said, the Jets offense as a whole was terrible. Davis didn't do anything either. It was an absolute mess. That's not why he's on this list. He's on this list because I really do think at this point that Breece Hall is going to get traded. He just put up an Instagram post yesterday with the hashtag free20. 20 is his jersey number. He wants out. He wants to get out. And why would the Jets not trade him away before he walks in free agency next year? Why would you not want to get something for him? Like, Breece Hall is still of the talent profile where you can get some decent value in return. The Jets are going absolutely nowhere this year. They're 0-6. They have nothing to play for. Trade away Hall. He doesn't seem like he's part of your plan. Why would you not just get something for him? I think that's what's going to happen. I really do. And if that does happen, then Davis is going to be the RB1 on a run-heavy Jets offense. Yeah, it's not a great offense, but I do think Davis is a really good football player, and he's made the most of his limited opportunities, excluding week 6. In week 5, he had 1 rush attempt for 5 yards, 3 receptions for 28 yards. And in his only career game where he saw over 50% of snaps, he scored 15.7 fantasy points on 16 opportunities. This is a 23-year-old back that is a do-it-all back. He's a 3-down skill set. He's 6'1", 220. Like, this is a really good player that if he's going to be the RB1 on this Jets offense, if Hall does get traded away, then yeah, you want to get Davis on your team now. Get him on your team now. Stash him at the bottom of your bench. So when Breece Hall does get traded away, you have a serviceable running back in fantasy until Braylon Allen returns, which might not be until the end of the fantasy football season. So Davis is only on this list because I think Breece Hall is going to get traded. All right, moving on to some other strong ads. Obviously, Jackson Dart needs to be on this list. He's been playing really good football. He runs a lot. He scores a lot of rushing touchdowns. Nothing more needs to be said. Like, Dart is going to be a good fantasy quarterback for the remainder of the year. Bam Knight for the Cardinals. I didn't really talk about Knight a lot because it's such a messy backfield. Who's it going to be? Michael Carter, DeMercado? Like, it's too confusing. It's not a good offense. You never know which guy's going to get what. They play Green Bay in week 7, which is a terrible matchup for running backs, and then they have a bye. So if you want to add Bam Knight, go for it. I just don't think he's going to do much for you in the short term. Jordan Whittington, the receiver for the Rams, is a nice add because Puka Nacua could be out the next 2-3 weeks. They have a bye in a couple of weeks, so they might hold him out until the bye. I think it's going to be a lot of Devontae Adams, obviously, and Kyron Williams, but Whittington, you could do worse. Christian Watson, the receiver for the Packers, he hasn't been activated yet, but he's probably going to be in week 7. Get him on your team now before he has a big game if you need a receiver. Tez Johnson, the receiver for the Bucs, had that nice touchdown. They have so many injuries. Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Emeka Ibuka, Bucky Irving. Like, add Johnson. He could score again this week. Luther Burden. I am recording this as the Monday Night Football game is going on, so I don't know how Burden's playing. Kyle Monangai, 2 rookies for the Bears who have a lot of upside, a lot of promise, potentially the second half of the year. Kayshon Boutte, who flashed again last week. Kendre Miller, I'll continue to put him on this list. I don't think Alvin Kamara is going to get traded anymore, but Miller continues to have a role on this offense. And then Jaden Blue for the Cowboys if Javonte Williams were to ever get hurt. That's all I have for you guys. I think these are the best players you need to be adding on the waiver wire right now to improve your team. Let's get better. Let's get some of these stars, these studs on your bench and see what happens. I think a couple of these guys are probably going to break out the second half of the year. And again, Kimani Vidal is my number 1 ad. Go all in to get him on your team. I really appreciate each and every one of you. If you like what we're doing here, if you can please like the video, subscribe to the channel, comment down below. I'd really appreciate it, and I'll see you in the next one.